days after his birth, Jesus is circumcised according to Jewish law and given the name announced by the angel before his conception. St. Luke writes, "When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, 'Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about.' So they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby, who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise him, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he had been conceived." This is the gospel of the Lord. It's January 1st, brand new year, 2006. Has anybody said Happy New Year to you this morning? Yeah. You bet. Yeah, we've all been greeting each other Happy New Year. It's just something kind of exciting about a new year. It's kind of a starting over. I can remember when I would start a new school year, because that was in September, but boy, you had brand new books, or notebook, new pencil, might even have new clothes to wear, and hadn't failed any tests yet, so we were starting out even, had a new beginning. And that's kind of what it is today. It's a new year. We've got a whole brand new year in front of us. And it's a time when we sometimes make New Year's resolutions. Everybody make New Year's resolutions? I see a lot of yeses so far. Well, traditionally a lot of people do. It's a time when you kind of take stock, you kind of look at where you're at and decide if you're happy about that or would you like to make some changes. A lot of people look at things and say, well, I put on a few pounds over the holidays. I believe I'm going to have a New Year's resolution to lose some weight this year. I'm going to watch what I eat. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to have a little healthier lifestyle. Somebody that's a workaholic might say, well, this year I'm really going to take a vacation. I'm not going to work as hard this year as I've always done. And somebody that's maybe not too happy about their job situation, their New Year's resolution might be, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to have a career change this year. And maybe for our students, a New Year's resolution is, I'm going to work a little harder this year. I'm going to study a little harder. I'm going to make better grades. All kinds of New Year's resolutions that we can make. But basically what it involves is we kind of look at where we're at and what would we like to have that's better. Well, just as we look at our physical situation, we can also look at our spiritual situation too. How am I doing in my spiritual life? How's my relationship with God? Am I really firmly entrenched in my faith, or do I have some doubts in here every now and then? Or have I got mad at God? Have things not been very good for me this year? Perhaps I've had somebody in my family be stricken with an illness that's really difficult for all of us to deal with, or perhaps a loved one that's been taken from us, or things are just different in my life. And it's not that way for everybody else. Things are going fine for the other folks. How come it's going bad for me? So maybe there's a little bit of resentment. And maybe there's even some doubts. We got theories of evolution. You turn on the public channels on TV, and you seem like you can find shows that want to give us scientific reasons for many things that happen. And it's even possible for doubts to sneak in. So perhaps it's a good time to just take a little spiritual inventory. Where am I at in my spiritual life, and would I like to see something change? And kind of in that light, I would like for us to look at our gospel lesson today and look at the two principal characters and look at some examples they might give us. I want us to look at the shepherds, and I want us to look at Mary and what they did. Well, to look at our gospel lesson today, we kind of have to go back a few verses ahead of time to see what's just happened. And what just happened a few verses ahead of time is that God has made a very public birth announcement of His Son. Up until that time, it's been a very private matter. Mary and Joseph knew about it, and probably Elizabeth and Zachariah. We know that Mary went to visit her cousin Elizabeth. They probably knew about it. But other than that, there's probably not too many people in the world who knew about the impending birth of God's Son. But God changes all that with a really public birth announcement, and He makes it to a group of shepherds. And it starts off with a bright light shining around shepherds. I mean, these shepherds are out working. It's night, but they're still working. I mean, they've got to watch their sheep. I mean, when do the coyotes and the wolves come? When's somebody liable to get into the flock and steal them? So the shepherds are on watch, and all of a sudden a brilliant bright light shines around them. What if you were one of those shepherds? What would your reaction be when you're just doing your normal work and all of a sudden this brilliant light shines around you, and then an angel begins to speak and tells you what's happened, that God's Son has been born, and then this whole choir, this whole heavenly chorus sings? I think my reaction is I would be scared to death. I would probably be just speechless. I wouldn't be able to say anything. I think that's the way those shepherds were. Well, as our gospel lesson starts today, this event is just concluding. The last strains of the anthem are fading away, and the light's fading away, and it's going back to darkness. It's now pitch black again. And now the shepherds begin to be able to talk. They kind of get their wits about it, and they talk about, what is this that's just been told us? And they very quickly say, let's go see. Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing. We're supposed to be able to find a baby in a manger? I mean, that's not a place to put a baby. But that's what the angel said. He was going to be wrapped up in cloths. Let's go see. You notice that the shepherds didn't say, let's go see if it's true. They just said, let's go see. I mean, this grand announcement, the appearance of angels, it got the shepherds' attention. They believed that it was true, but they went because they wanted to be witnesses. The angel didn't tell them, you must go to Bethlehem to see this. The angel just gave them the directions. You'll find them in a manger. And you can think about it. The shepherds would know where stables are. I mean, they know where every sheep pen and barn was, so it didn't seem out of the place or different for them to have to go to a barn. They could do that. They would be comfortable with that. What if God's message had instead gone to the leaders of Israel, to the religious leaders? What do you think they would have done with that message? Would they have run to a barn to find the king of Israel? That doesn't make sense. God wouldn't send His Son to be born in a stable. He'd be born in some royal palace, and there'd be attendants to take care of him. It wouldn't have made sense to the religious leaders of that day to find God's Son laying in a feed trough in a barn. But to the shepherds, they could accept that. And they could go to that barn, and they didn't necessarily feel out of place. And when they went there, they found everything just like the angels had told them they would find it. They did find a baby laying in a manger, and he was wrapped up in cloths. Everything that the angel had told them was true. For the shepherds, everything was confirmed. Now, what about Mary and Joseph? How had things been for Mary and Joseph until Christ's birth had taken place? Here's Mary, who's pregnant out of wedlock. What do you think her social status was? She may have been treated as an outcast here for some period of time. And now, here come these shepherds, and they say, we've just seen the most glorious thing. Angels have told us that your Son is the Messiah. Do you think that would be encouraging to Mary? I think it would be. I think she might have felt a little bit vindicated. And I think what we see between the shepherds and the interaction between Mary and Joseph is probably an encouraging of each other. Mary and Joseph could tell the shepherds the visits they had from the angels. The shepherds would tell them the glorious scene that they'd seen, and we see two groups of people encouraging each other. And for Christians, that's a good thing for us to do, to be encouraging each other. Well, after the shepherds had seen these things, they now were not content to keep this a secret. They were going to make it public. And so the first example I want us to look at, as we kind of look at our faith life, is The shepherds were very public in their proclamation of what they had seen. They had seen something that was utterly amazing. The appearance of those angels. Then they had gone to the stable and they found everything just as the angels had said they would find it. This was amazing. I mean, the shepherd's life was really kind of boring, didn't it? I mean, do they have much to talk about? Now they had something to talk about. They were glad to go and tell this story. The other principal character in our story this morning is Mary. And what was Mary's reaction to all these things? Hers was a very private reaction. She treasured and she pondered all these things that the shepherds had told her, all these things that had happened. You know, mothers are like that. They can remember everything that their little children have done, you know. I can remember when my mother was still alive, and there might be a family gathering or something, and she'd say, yeah, I can remember when Lloyd was little, he used to do this, and she'd tell some really embarrassing things. Mothers remember everything, don't they? Well, Mary is remembering everything that she's been told about this child up to this point. She treasures these things, but she ponders them in her heart. Mary's reaction is a very private reaction, and that's something that each one of us has to have also. As we look at our spiritual lives, I can't tell what's in the heart of any individual in here. I only know what's in my heart. And it's the same for you. And we have to spend time thinking about where we're at. We need to spend time thinking about who Christ was and what is it that He did for us. And as Mary thought about these things, perhaps Mary had some questions too. Perhaps she wondered, why did she get picked? Of all the women in the world, why was she the one chosen? And why was He born in a stable? And why did God tell shepherds instead of the religious leaders? And why didn't she get to hear the angels sing? I don't know if Mary had those thoughts or not, but she could have. If you're thinking about things, you're treasuring and you're pondering, you're asking questions. And sometimes we ask questions about our own faith too. You know, why did these things have to happen? There's a private side to our faith. And the example that Mary gives us is that ponder, meditate. Think about your faith life. Think about all the things that you know about Christ. And think where you can find out more. Think about His Word that we have. And spend time in meditation and reading. In our final verse this morning, it tells us that the child was circumcised and he was given a name. Now, it was the custom that all the Jewish boys were circumcised on the 8th day. Mary and Joseph were obedient to that custom. They were obedient parents. But one thing that's unique is that they didn't get to pick the name for this child. You know, the name's a really important thing. And the custom in that day and time was the family would name a child after someone in that family. If you'll think a story earlier, think about Zachariah and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist. An angel had told them that their son was to be given that name, John. And when the 8th day came, remember that Zachariah was speechless. When the angel had told Zachariah that his elderly wife would give birth to a child, he had scoffed at that. So he was speechless. He couldn't even talk. So the people went to Elizabeth and said, what are we going to name this child? She said, John. And they said, John? You don't have anybody in your family named John. Why John? And they didn't even believe Elizabeth. They went to Zachariah, and he couldn't talk. And they gave him a tablet, and they said, what's this child to be named? And he wrote on there, his name is John. You know, they were breaking tradition. They weren't naming that child after someone in their family. You know, up at my vet clinic, I have people come in all the time. They got a brand new little puppy. He's 6 weeks old. They just got him, and they don't even have a name for him yet. But they're giving careful thought to what they're going to name that puppy. They want him to live up to his name. All of you that are parents, when you named your children, I'm thinking you gave a lot of thought to that too. Maybe we picked out a name that we thought just sounded really nice. Or maybe we did name them after someone in the family. But a lot of thought was given into that name. And God put a lot of thought into the name that He gave to His Son too. His name was Jesus. And the Hebrew words, they're actually a combination of two Hebrew words. The first part of it means the Lord, and the second part, saves. So that the name Jesus means the Lord saves. You and I know how the Lord saves. When you think back to when those angels told the shepherds, there's going to be peace toward men. There's going to be peace between God and mankind again. I don't know if the shepherds understood how that was going to take place. But ever since sin had come into the world, mankind has been touched by sin, been tainted by sin. And God can't stand sin. He's got to punish it. And God's plan was to send His own Son to take that punishment. You know, we not only know the story of Christmas and the birth, we also know the story of Easter. We know about crucifixion, and we know about resurrection. And we know how God sent Jesus and how Jesus did save us, how He did bring us peace because the relationship between mankind and God is restored through Christ. You know, just as we know the whole story today, back then, Mary only knew a little bit of the story. She'd only known this infant child for 8 weeks plus the time she'd been pregnant with him. But yet she treasured and she pondered everything she knew about that child. The shepherds, all they knew about was this one event that was His birth, and yet they went and told about it. You and I know the whole story of what Christ did for us. We've got a lot to treasure and to ponder upon in our hearts. The teachings that He gave us, the way that He instructed us to live. And just like those shepherds, we've got a great story to tell. So as I conclude this morning, I guess the message that I want to leave us with is that as you look at your situation, where you're at in life right now, take some time to be like Mary, to think about it, to ponder upon it, to study upon it. And when you realize what Christ has done for us, that's a great story to tell. And there's a lot of people that need to hear that story. Tell them about that special name that He has, and that He has, because of it we have salvation. In His name, amen.